Uche had always been a man of purpose. A steady and determined young man of 27, he had come to the village with hopes of making his mark. Raised by his aunt after his parents died in a tragic accident, Uche was no stranger to hardship. He had no time for distractions like love. His focus was clear: work, save, and one day, build a life of his own. It was market day when everything changed. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the bustling village square. The vendors were shouting their wares, children ran through the streets, and the smell of roasting maize and freshly baked bread filled the air. Uche had come to pick up supplies for the day's work, his thoughts solely on getting in and out of the market as quickly as possible. But something caught his eye. At the far end of the market, sitting beneath the large mango tree, was a woman. To most, she would have appeared just like any other elderly woman in the village: wrinkled skin, silver hair braided tightly into a bun, and clothed in a faded wrapper and blouse. Yet there was something about her that made Uche pause. Her posture was graceful, as if she had lived 1,000 lifetimes and learned to move with the calm certainty of age. Her eyes, though they appeared soft with time, sparkled with a quiet intelligence. As Uche stood there, watching her from afar, something inside him stirred, something he couldn't quite explain. He shook his head. It must be the heat, he thought, trying to brush off the strange feeling in his chest. But as he continued to walk toward the market stall, he couldn't help but glance back at her. The woman's name was Ngozi. To everyone else, she was a widow who had outlived her youth and beauty. A relic of the past. But to Uche, something in her presence seemed timeless, as if she were both ancient and ageless at the same time. His mind raced as he continued shopping, trying to push thoughts of Ngozi aside. But when his errand was finished, he found himself returning to the tree, as though drawn by some invisible force. As he neared the mango tree, he noticed she was no longer weaving her baskets. Instead, she sat with her hands folded in her lap, looking at the sky, a serene smile on her face. "Good afternoon, Mama," Uche said, unable to stop himself. Ngozi turned her gaze to him, her eyes soft but piercing. "Ah, Uche, my son. You always in such a hurry. The world does not stop for you, but neither must you rush through it." Uche hesitated, unsure of what to say. I was just passing by. I hope I'm not disturbing you." Ngozi chuckled, the sound like wind rustling through leaves. "No, my son. I am never disturbed. Come, sit. Tell me what weighs on your mind." Uche's heart pounded. There was something about her calmness that made him feel at ease, yet his mind was a whirlwind. Why was he so drawn to this woman? He had never been one to approach older women, let alone speak to them so openly. But somehow, being in her presence felt natural. "I've never seen you like this before," Uche blurted out, not thinking. Ngozi raised an eyebrow. "Like what, my son?" Like a woman who could turn the world upside down." The words slipped out before he could stop them, and he immediately regretted it. What kind of young man talked like that? But Ngozi simply smiled, her eyes glinting with understanding. "There is much more to this world than what the eyes can see, Uche. You must learn to see with your heart. The world around you may have its judgments, but they are not always the truth." Uche felt a weight lift off his shoulders as if he had just been given permission to express something he hadn't even realized was in his heart. Over the next few weeks, Uche found himself visiting Ngozi more often. At first, it was just casual conversations under the mango tree, but soon their talks became deeper, more intimate. They shared stories of their lives, their joys, their pains, and their dreams. Uche found himself opening up in ways he had never done before, not even with his closest friends. In Ngozi, he found not just a woman, but a confidant, a guide. She seemed to understand everything he said without judgment, and her wisdom gave him clarity in ways he had never known. And, despite the age difference, despite the fact that the village saw her as an old woman, Uche began to see her in a completely different light. He saw the beauty that time had veiled, the woman she once was, and still was in spirit. In his eyes, she wasn't an old woman, she was the embodiment of everything he had ever longed for. Her kindness, her strength, her quiet wisdom, it all drew him in. He saw beauty in her wrinkles, in the silver strands of hair that framed her face, in the gentle way she moved. Her age was merely a number that had no bearing on the love that began to blossom in his heart. But the village saw things differently. It wasn't long before the whispers started. At first, it was just a few curious glances, but as Uche began visiting Mama Ngozi more regularly, the rumors grew. The villagers, especially the elders, were baffled. Why would a young man like Uche spend time with an old woman like her? They wondered aloud. There are so many young girls in the village who would make a better match. The gossip reached Uche's ears one evening when he was walking back from the market. A group of women were sitting by the well, their voices lowering as he approached. "Have you seen Uche?" one woman whispered. "He's always with that old woman. Mama Ngozi, they say. What does he see in her? She's no longer a woman, just a shadow of one." Uche's heart sank. The words stung, but he didn't let them show. He knew they didn't understand. How could they? They hadn't seen what he had seen. They hadn't felt the connection, the depth of Mama Ngozi's spirit. He continued walking, his resolve firm. He wasn't going to let their opinions sway him. He loved her, and that was all that mattered. The rumors, however, didn't stop at gossip. As Mama Ngozi's past began to resurface, the village's perception of her changed completely. One afternoon, an old man named Ease, who had once served as the village chief, approached Uche. His eyes were narrow with suspicion. "You've been spending a lot of time with Mama Ngozi, haven't you?" Ease asked, his voice low and cautious. Uche nodded, his chest tight. "Yes, I have." "What of it?" Ease leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "You do know who she really is, don't you?" Uche blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" "She's not just some widow from the outskirts of the village. She was once a queen, Uche. A descendant of the royal family. Her bloodline is one of power and wealth, but she gave it all up. She abandoned her title, her riches, to live here in poverty. That's why they exiled her." Uche's mind raced. The story seemed too fantastical to be true. A queen? Mama Ngozi, a queen? The woman he had grown to love was no commoner after all. He felt a mix of shock, disbelief, and awe. But then, the truth sank in. Uche spent that night restless, replaying E's words over and over in his mind. A queen? It was hard to imagine. Mama Ngozi, with her quiet wisdom and unassuming presence, seemed worlds apart from the stories of royal bloodlines and power. The next morning, he found himself standing outside Mama Ngozi's home, the sun barely peeking over the horizon. He had to know the truth. He couldn't continue loving someone without fully understanding who they were, who she was. As he approached her house, the familiar scent of firewood and earth filled his senses. Mama Ngozi was seated outside, just as she had been on so many other mornings, her hands busy with weaving a basket. She looked up as he approached, her warm smile lighting up her face. "Good morning, Uche," she greeted him softly, her voice as soothing as always. "Good morning, Mama." Uche stood still for a moment, his heart heavy with questions. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but filled with determination. "Mama, there's something I need to ask you." Mama Ngozi set down her basket, her hands resting on her lap as she met his gaze. She had known this day would come. She had felt the weight of the questions growing in Uche's heart. For years, she had kept her past hidden, both out of shame and a desire to live a peaceful life away from the shadows of royalty. But now, it seemed the truth could no longer stay buried. "You've heard the rumors, haven't you?" she asked gently. Uche nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I heard about your past. That you were once a queen." Mama Ngozi sighed, her eyes distant for a moment as if she were reliving the past. She looked at Uche with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "Yes, Uche. It's true. I was born into a royal family, the daughter of a great king. My people were once rich and powerful. I was to marry a prince, to continue our legacy, to carry the weight of the kingdom's future on my shoulders. Uche's heart pounded in his chest. This was not the story he had expected to hear. But, what happened? Why did you leave all of that behind? Mama Ngozi's eyes became distant, as if she was seeing something far beyond the walls of her humble home. I left because of love, Uche. I fell in love with a man who was not of royal blood. He was a simple farmer, just like the men in this village. My family could not accept it. They insisted I marry the prince, that I keep the bloodline pure. But my heart belonged to the farmer. I chose him, and because of that, I was cast out. I was no longer welcome in my own home, my own kingdom. Uche listened, entranced by her story. What happened to the man you loved? He asked softly. Mama Ngozi's face softened, and for a moment, Uche saw the young woman she once was, the woman with dreams and hope, the woman who had believed in love above all else. He died, Uche, she said quietly. Not long after I was exiled. It was a hard life, living in the wilderness with nothing but my love for him to keep me going. Eventually, I came to this village. It was the only place that welcomed me, where I could start over, live without the weight of my past. Uche sat down beside her, his heart aching for the pain she had endured. So you gave it all up for love? For a simple life? Mama Ngozi nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Yes, Uche. I chose love, and love did not fail me, even though the world turned its back on me. But I have carried the burden of that decision every day. The shame, the loss, the loneliness. And now, when I think of the future, I wonder if I made the right choice. Uche reached out, taking her hand gently in his. You don't have to wonder, Mama. You made the choice that was right for you. You chose love, and that is something that can never be wrong. For a long time, they sat in silence, the weight of Mama Ngozi's story hanging in the air between them. Uche had thought he knew the woman he had fallen for, but now, he saw her through a completely new lens. She wasn't just an old woman, she was a woman who had lived a life full of hardship, sacrifice, and deep love. She had a past that many would find difficult to understand, but Uche didn't need to understand it all. What mattered was that he loved her, and he would stand by her no matter what. Word of Mama Ngozi's royal past spread like wildfire through the village. At first, there were murmurs of disbelief, but soon, the villagers could no longer ignore the truth. Mama Ngozi's former status as royalty didn't just elevate her in their eyes, it made her a symbol of something greater. But not everyone saw her in a new light. The same villagers who had once disregarded her as an old woman now resented the idea that someone of her bloodline could stoop so low as to fall in love with a commoner like Uche. Uche is just a fool, they whispered. He doesn't know what he's gotten himself into. She may have been a queen, but now she's nothing. The elders, especially, were furious. They saw Uche's continued affection for Mama Ngozi as an affront to their customs and traditions. In their eyes, he was dishonouring the village and his own future by continuing a relationship with a woman of Mama Ngozi's status, one who had been cast out for her defiance. The pressure on Uche grew. Every day, he heard new rumours, new accusations. His friends, once supportive of his decisions, began to pull away. Why are you doing this to yourself? One of them asked. You have so much potential. Why waste your time with her? Uche had never been one to listen to rumors or give in to pressure, but the constant disapproval weighed heavily on him. He knew that his love for Mama Ngozi was real, but was it enough to stand against the judgment of an entire village? One evening, after yet another argument with his friends, Uche walked to Mama Ngozi's home, his heart conflicted and burdened. Mama, I don't know if I can keep doing this, he confessed, sitting down beside her. Mama Ngozi looked at him with understanding. What do you mean, Uche? Everything. It's too much. The rumors, the pressure. The villagers are against us. They don't understand. And sometimes, I wonder if maybe they are right. Maybe I'm just being foolish. Maybe I should let you go. Mama Ngozi's face softened, but her eyes were filled with quiet strength. You've always had the power to choose, Uche. I am not your burden, nor am I your shame. If you love me, then let that love be your guide. But if you must leave, then do so with a clear heart. I have lived my life, and I am at peace with the choices I made. You must find peace with yours. Uche's heart broke as he looked into her eyes. There was no hesitation, no anger in her gaze. Just the understanding of someone who had lived a full life and had come to terms with her past. I love you, Mama, Uche whispered, tears welling in his eyes. I'll never let you go. And at that moment, Uche made his decision. He would face the village, face the judgment, and fight for the love that had defied time itself. Uche's decision to stand by Mama Ngozi wasn't met with approval. If anything, the villagers' disapproval deepened. Whispers turned into open mockery, and the elders, who had once been pillars of the community, now saw Uche as a disgrace. The marketplace, once a place of casual greetings and neighborly exchanges, had become a battleground for gossip. Whenever Uche passed by, there were hushed conversations, pointed fingers, and angry stares. His friends, who had once been close, turned their backs on him, distancing themselves from his choices. Some even called him a fool for loving an old woman who had been cast aside by her own people. Don't be a fool, Uche, one of his old friends, Obi, shouted across the market one morning as Uche passed by. She's nothing but a burden to you. She's old, and her past is full of shame. Don't let her drag you down with her. Uche stopped in his tracks, the words stinging more than he cared to admit. The market around him seemed to hold its breath, the entire village waiting for his reaction. But Uche stood tall, unwavering. I choose my path, Obi, Uche said, his voice steady. I choose love, not judgment. You can call it foolish, but it is my choice to make. Obi's eyes narrowed. You'll regret it. You'll see. The words were empty to Uche, but the weight of the village's collective rejection pressed down on him. Despite the pressure, he refused to back down. He had already come to terms with his heart, and Mama Ngozi's past no longer seemed like a barrier to him. She wasn't just the queen of a lost kingdom, she was a woman who had loved deeply and lost even more. She was a survivor, just like him. But the village wasn't going to let go so easily. They began to take matters into their own hands, trying to turn Uche against Mama Ngozi. One day, Uche returned home to find that his small house had been defaced. Painted on the walls were crude words, calling him a traitor, a fool. The windows were broken, and the door had been smashed in. Anger bubbled up inside Uche, but it wasn't rage toward the village. It was rage toward himself. Why did it have to be like this? Why couldn't love be enough? He ran to Mama Ngozi's house, his heart pounding. Mama Ngozi was waiting for him outside, sitting under the large mango tree, her hands resting calmly in her lap. Despite the chaos swirling around Uche, her presence always had a calming effect on him. When he saw her, he could no longer hold back the flood of emotions that had been building inside. They've done it again, Mama, he said, his voice cracking. They've torn my life apart. I don't know how much longer I can take this. I can't even walk through the village without them mocking me. Mama Ngozi stood up slowly, her face calm, but her eyes filled with understanding. She didn't say a word, but instead reached out and pulled him into a gentle embrace. She held him tightly, as if trying to offer all the love and strength she had left. You are strong, Uche, she whispered. Stronger than they will ever know. Love is never easy, my son. It never has been, and it never will be. The world will test you. It will try to break you, to make you question yourself. But you must never let them steal your truth. You must never let them take away the love you have in your heart. Uche closed his eyes, allowing her words to wash over him. In that moment, he realized something. He wasn't fighting the village's rejection because of some youthful rebellion or stubbornness. He was fighting because his love for Mama Ngozi was worth protecting. It was real, and nothing could diminish that. I can't give up on you, Mama, he said, his voice steadier now. I can't let them destroy what we have. Mama Ngozi pulled away slightly and cupped his face in her hands. Then don't, Uche. Do not let them break you. They may not see the beauty in our love, but it is ours, and that is enough. As if on cue, a group of villagers appeared in the distance, their faces hard and determined. Uche knew what this meant. They were coming to confront him, to drag him back into the fold of their disapproving gaze. Mama, Uche said quietly, they're coming. Mama Ngozi smiled softly. Let them come. Let them see us stand together. Let them see what love truly looks like. Uche looked at her, awe in his eyes. Despite all the turmoil around them, Mama Ngozi stood as a rock, unshaken, resolute. He had never seen such strength in anyone before. The villagers approached, led by Ease, the elder who had first revealed Mama Ngozi's royal past. He stopped before them, his arms folded. Uche, Ease said, his voice stern, you must understand that this affair of yours with this woman is dishonorable. She may have been a queen once, but those days are gone. What you're doing is disgraceful to the village. You are setting yourself up for a life of regret. Uche met Ease's gaze without flinching. I'm not ashamed of her. I'm not ashamed of loving her. If that's disgraceful, then so be it. But I won't live in shame anymore. This is my life, not yours. Mama Ngozi stepped forward then, her presence commanding, her voice calm yet unwavering. I was a queen, yes. I loved a man who was not of my bloodline. But I have lived, and I have loved, and that is all that matters. The world may judge me, but I stand before you all, not with shame, but with pride in my heart. I lived my truth. And now, I ask you, Uche, do you live yours? Uche turned to Mama Ngozi, his heart swelling with love for her. He had made his choice, and it wasn't just about love, it was about the truth of his heart, and the honor of standing by the woman he loved. Ease and the villagers stood silent, the tension in the air thick. It was as if the whole village was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to pass. Finally, Ease spoke, his voice softer, though still tinged with disapproval. You are a stubborn young man, Uche. And perhaps there is more to love than we give credit for. But you must understand that we do this out of concern for you. We cannot support what you've chosen. Uche nodded slowly, though the pain in his chest was evident. I don't need your support, Ease. I need my truth. The villagers looked at one another uneasily, but in the end, they turned and walked away, leaving Uche and Mama Ngozi standing alone, their hands intertwined. The confrontation in the village square marked the beginning of a new chapter for Uche and Mama Ngozi. While the villagers' judgment didn't cease, the bond between the two of them grew stronger. Uche had faced the rejection head-on and emerged victorious, not because he had won over the village, but because he had remained true to his heart. In the weeks that followed, the whispers began to quiet. Slowly, the villagers came to accept that Uche and Mama Ngozi were not going anywhere. They were an odd pair, yes, but their love was undeniable. And eventually, something shifted. The same villagers who had once condemned Uche began to see the strength in his choice. They saw that his love for Mama Ngozi wasn't born from pity or foolishness. It was born from something deeper, something more profound. It wasn't an easy road, but Uche never once looked back. He had found a love that transcended age, judgment, and the opinions of others. And that love, he knew, would endure for the rest of his life.